Well, good day, everyone. Today we've got Diadem back in the house, and she's going to share with us well, should I say detailed research? Because she's always true to her Scorpio rising. She's always very detailed and very in depth with her research. And Scorpio does through research, by the way. And we are going to talk about the generations demarcations according to astrology.
Yes.
So, Diadem, what do you have for us?
Generations. Let's talk about generations because
Yeah, this is gonna be interesting because I definitely have something to say.
Donny, we are observing lots of cruelty in these days all around the world. So I just curious what's going on with this generation.
I mean, like Gen Z
Z.
starts with Pluto in Sagittarius. So now transit Pluto is sextiling their Pluto one by one for the next 20 years in that generation. And Pluto via transit will also go out of bounds.
Oh.
It's, it started going out of bound in 2025, this year actually, as we talk about it, and will continue to be intermittently going out of bound for the next 9 years till 2035. 2030, we will be having transit Uranus going out of bound as well. And Uranus rules over the sign of Aquarius, where transit Pluto will be. So 2030 to 2035 is going to be perhaps even more crazy than 2025 to 2029.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Let's
Regarding Gen Z themes. Yeah.
mhm. Let's dive in.
Yes. Let's
Okay.
go down the well of research.
Yes, let's look at that. Archetypes become activated as planets move towards the specific aspects and gradually lose influence as the planets separate. And each aspect is associated with pattern that creates a cycle that begins with the previous conjunctions between particular pair of planets. So we know that each cycle begins with a conjunction, then progress through a sextile, square, and trine, and culminating the opposition, as we know. Then it completes the cycle with another trine, square, and so on, and the beginning of a new cycle at the end. A planet moves in its orbit by making these aspects not just one planet, but with all the other planets. This means that no single aspect can be considered in isolation. Each cycle leaves an imprint, and the collective unconscious respond in a slow unfolding rhythm. Therefore, the situation becomes even more complex because multiple cycles occur simultaneously and they all intersect each other. It makes it impossible to predict specific events. One thing leads to another, and what happens next depends on what we do now. The mathematical structure of planetary cycles is so profound that symbolism provides a valuable lens for understanding the character of collective influence across particular eras. Now, I think this is, hold on, I can change. Okay, now I can change the slides. If we consider the two slowest planets, Pluto and Neptune, the time between their conjunction is 498 years, and this is a period that will affect the rhythm of the world and the sign which these two planets in. It leaves its marks on that period. This conjunction was in Gemini in 1892, and we're still in 90 years cycle period of this conjunction. And this period covers the 1947 to 2034. In other words, for a period of this conjunction starting in 1800s, the main theme must have been Gemini symbolism. Let's keep that in mind, okay? If we look from that period to the present day, the most important development order is electricity, telephone, radio, industrial machinery, and we know that it will continue until 2034, so it's ongoing process. Internet, digitalization, mobile technology, robots. the period that started electricity created a revolution in production and communication, which is rarely seen in history. It was the birth of modern physics, the beginning of transportation and globalization. Naturally, these developments were followed by geopolitical tensions, of course. We can say that nuclear science and technological development, of course, psychology and parapsychology are the results of this conjunction. Now, we are currently experiencing the 19 years sextile period of this conjunction, and this sextile will continue as sub-refraction of Gemini symbolism until 2034. Now,
Yes, and when
yeah,
I think about that Neptune sextile Pluto in the
yeah,
previous slide, it is also talk about oil and gas exploration.
mm, yes.
So when 2034, when the sextile finally separates for good,
Mhm, mhm,
I
mhm.
think we'll also be moving towards another way of generating power.
Yes, definitely, because it's
Yeah,
going to another aspects of these two planets, and these aspects will speak itself. Yes, for sure.
yeah. I think we're going nuclear because of the signs of Neptune and Pluto is in
Mhm.
Aquarius and uh, Aries, respectively, when
Yeah,
the sextile separates for good. So it may be that we're moving towards nuclear energy.
nuclear
Yeah.
energy. Let's let's hope it will be good thing, Donny. Let's
Well, nothing's inherently bad or good. It's what it's used for,
yeah.
the
We'll
intention.
see. Yeah. Yes, each generation has its own astrological markers that distinguish it from others. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, as we know, are generational planets because they spend a long time in one sign and they reflect different ideals in different signs. Uranus explains how we rebel and grow as a society. Neptune is the ruler of our dreams and desires. Pluto's Pluto's challenge is how we transform and evolve. What I mean by Pluto's challenge, I mean Pluto in Sagittarius and Pluto in Scorpio symbolize generations with very different characteristics, while Pluto in Sagittarius represent a fearless and adventurous generation. Pluto in Scorpio symbolize pushing boundaries and constant transformation. Considering the current global population, 65% of the population is Pluto Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, and very early Sagittarius. Pluto Leo is just 10%, but very big but. Despite the Pluto Leo generations 10% rate, they still continue to rule the world. It's kind of interesting according to me. I'll explain it in a minute. Now, let's see how these collective effects differ over the years. These charts show the dates when the other two slow-moving planets change signs, as you can see here. Some periods are stand out more because several celestial events occur simultaneously. These societal effects of these years are expected to persist over a long term and leave deep, enduring marks in that period. Yes, Pluto Leo generation, but before Pluto Leo generation, do you want to add something over here, Donny? Donny?
Can you go back to the slide talking about the different generations? Like the
Yeah, this
one
one?
uh yes, this one.
Okay, okay,
Because I want to add a little bit about the silent generation
okay.
because silent generations basically it's like what Didam has mentioned, it really is demarcated between the years 1928 to 1945 with Pluto in Cancer. Um, but Pluto was in Cancer until 1939 before he actually entered into Leo.
Mhm.
And then Neptune was like in Virgo for the close to the whole period, 1929 to 1945, and Uranus, which is faster moving,
Mhm.
it basically traverses from Aries to Gemini in that uh, period, 1928 to 1945. So when we actually talk about generation demarcators, particularly of the outer planets, the transit outer planets, it's usually unseen patterns or unconscious or subconscious patterning or conditioning that's in each generation when we talk about outer planets defining a generation. Um, if I actually think about the silent generation, this generation was basically brought up by parents who endured both the pain of the World War and the Great Depression. And they inherited their parents' patterns out of necessity rather than choosing them. I guess it's important to take note. And these trends basically persisted or are being carried forward uh, unconsciously or subconsciously because of this. And when I think about the silent generation, I can think of like five unconscious or subconscious patterning or unseen patterns. The first unseen pattern is basically the self eraser as
Mhm.
morality. Because the silent generation was taught that having no needs was the utmost ideal. Don't
Mhm.
take up space, don't have emotional demands, don't ask for assistance. The
Mhm.
moral goal here was to be low maintenance, basically. And so, therefore, expressing feelings or aspirations, they are sometimes being interpreted by
Mhm.
following generations as needless and as extravagant.
Mhm.
This I attributed to like Pluto in Cancer, the energy.
Mhm.
And the second unseen pattern here I see with the silent generation is that sacrifice equals love.
Mm.
Because they were brought up to think that in order to support the family, loving someone meant putting in more effort, giving more, and sometimes going missing for that matter. And survival was the currency, not emotional expression.
Mhm.
And therefore, the silent generation, I think, truly doesn't comprehend what younger generations are trying to achieve when they emphasize communication and emotional presence.
Mhm.
The third unseen pattern that I do see with the silent generation is that obedience is being seen as stability.
Mhm.
This is because they grew up with institutions with rigid hierarchies, and this basically influenced the silent generation. Things
Yes.
like the government, the military, schools, and churches back then.
Mm.
And the world didn't fall apart because of order in that sense with these institutions. So they therefore have an innate desire to uphold law and order, even
Mhm.
in situations where the regulations are illogical, to be
Mm.
honest.
Mhm.
And the fourth unseen pattern I see with the silent generation is that scarcity is being seen as worldview.
Mhm.
Um, I guess there's this kind of residue of lack that's in their bones, even if they had a comfortable adult life. I think the approach is like don't waste anything, take no chances, and store everything. Additionally, this also manifests emotionally as well. Validation, praise, and affection are frequently scarce.
Mhm.
And they were never taught that giving is safe, not because they don't feel it. And the last unseen pattern I see with the silent generation is that conflict equals rapture.
Mm.
What do I mean by that? Uh, Conflict to them brought danger and instability in their homes.
Mm.
This meant that the single thing keeping the family alive might fall apart. There's almost this unconscious or subconscious fear pertaining to that. And
Mm-hmm.
so conflict was avoided at all cost. And their main relational strategies were endurance, retreat, and silence. And not to forget that Cancer is a water sign, and water signs are mute, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Waters and
And
especially
so
Cancer. Mm-hmm.
nothing is really resolved, by silence in this case. And all it does is to postpone to the next generation's reckoning. So this is the part that actually causes friction, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And these behaviors now feel like virtues while they are unconscious in nature. Selflessness viewed to is being viewed as love, basically, and strength and endurance are similar in that sense. Obedience is seen as accountability.
Yeah.
It feels almost like to that generation, silence is viewed as being respectful, but does it actually resolve anything
Yeah.
or give rise to a subsequent society where scarcity and fear basically bound people together? That's
Mm-hmm.
what I see. And if you think about, has the pattern actually changed? It hasn't, but the world has moved on.
Yeah.
The silent generation perceives younger generations who value expressiveness, flexibility, emotional presence, and questioning the system as disruptive. While in actuality, they were merely adjusting to a whole different worldview and
Mm-hmm.
way of living. This
Mm-hmm.
is not personal at all. These patterns have an era coded within it. And by giving unseen generational agreements, we
Mm-hmm.
can identify what no longer benefits us moving forward.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yes.
And we
After,
move on to that Pluto
yeah.
in Leo generation.
Yeah, yes, yes. This generation, which makes up 10% of the world population, yes. As the world struggles with two consecutive wars and Great Depression, Neptune and Uranus are transitioning from earth signs to air signs in time. While the earth element is about settling down, grounding, establishing systems, and being productive, the air signs are defined as social and intellectual. Yes, as you can see in the photos in this slide, there were difficult times because people were trying to rebuild their lives after the wars and economic crisis. Earth sign, Uranus, while Uranus in Taurus was shaking up financial resources, Neptune in Virgo was questioning the very meaning of producing efficient system. All known values were being turned upside down after the wars. There was a search for everyone to start their life over again. It was the issue of where and how to start, what the new business lines will be. Of course, no one had any idea at the beginning. They had to figure it out. Thinking, planning, researching, talking, air sign. It was a time for new research and building new relationship models. Saturn Pluto conjunction. The foundations of the old world order crumbled under the weight of two consecutive world wars. Life had to go on. And after these kind of strong effect, the beat movements emerged in the United States and spread worldwide, driven by rising unemployment rates. It was essentially a counterculture initiated by people traveling illegally across the country by train between 1950s and 1960s. They were hoping to find job. Actually, I should say daily work for a living, not a job. Saturn and Jupiter Earth signs seeking a regular social environment. These movements starts with Uranus in Cancer. They were searching for home. The war had destroyed entire cities. They must rebuild their homes. No job, no money, no house. Then Uranus in Leo came along, uniqueness, expressing emotions and freedom. The Beat generation was preoccupied with improvisations, passionate dialogue, and explicit sexual and drug experiences. And this lifestyle influenced the literature as a result. By the 60s, the Beat movement had become the vanguard of American youth underground, being to show its influence across everything from music to cinema to poetry and novels. Prominent musicians of 60s were significantly influenced by the Beat generation. Bands like The Doors, Bob Dylan, Rolling Stones, The Beatles, Pink Floyd, and these bands embodied the Beat generation's oppositional nature in music through their experimental work. Since they traveled not only with America, but also around the world, this trend reached all over the Europe. The subsequent hippies generation was inspired by this movement. The hippies generation began to take shape during the years when Uranus transitioned from Leo to Virgo, a period of individuality, fun, and enthusiasm. The air sign period, Neptune in Libra, Uranus in Gemini, was a time when education was mobilized and made compulsory because that was a period when schooling was severely disrupted by war and economic difficulties. By the time, thanks to education, the lower classes could also assert themselves with simultaneous access to the same information and knowledge. That period was the first foundation of globalization. Uranus, Pluto, Jupiter were in Leo in 1955. At the same time, Saturn square Pluto, Uranus square Neptune, Jupiter was supporting what Uranus and Pluto want in Leo. That was the big turning point regarding civil rights. I'm sure everyone remembered the Rosa Parks protest, space race, youth culture, rising Elvis Presley rock and roll, modern technology, electronic technologies. These were the years. During the period when Uranus moved from Cancer to Leo, nuclear families were restricted again. And thanks to technological advancements, housework got easier. And people had the more time for themselves, Uranus Leo. This also increased personal creativity. When Neptune and Uranus were in Earth signs, for example, 1930s, families were much more productive, but they became more consuming units when these two planets were changed signs, Libra and Leo. They were encouraged to consume through advertisements. Let's remember, there's a powerful Gemini Neptune sextile in the background, symbolizing technological advancements in Gemini. While Uranus in Leo, Jupiter moves from Capricorn all the way to Leo, supporting the period when revolutionary youth expressed themselves through the rock and roll movement. During this period, a generation developed that held anti-war views and opposed government policies that included compulsory service, especially military service. Let's not forget that this is a generation that represents new beginnings after a period of war and chaos. It's a generation that values themselves, yet is more confident and stubborn due to its lifestyle, a generation with strong opinions and who don't like change. As a fixed signs, this generation has certainly made a big impact because they are unwilling to compromise their philosophy. Let's like these. While the Leo generation currently makes up 10% of the population, it's a fact that they still rule the world. Today's presidents are Trump, Erdogan, Putin, Jinping, Netanyahu, and some others. On the other hand, of course, Stephen Hawking, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and also John Lennon, Bob Dylan, Freddie Mercury, Elton John, David Bowie, Meryl Streep, and Muhammad Ali Pele are among the Leo generation. We've seen that this generation's self-imposed agenda hasn't always benefited or good for society. Pluto's energy in Leo has brought fixed signs conservatism to the forefront. The shadow of Pluto in Leo is that its emphasis on the individual despite the collective. The Pluto in Leo period is a period when the far right as a political opinion is on the rise, and this politics excessively supports the social hierarchy. It embraces the idea that some people are inherently inferior and others superior. It promotes the extreme superiority of certain individuals or groups. This type of politics is generally authoritarian, I'm afraid. Yes. Do you want to
Yeah,
say
I
something
mean,
about this?
I've got something to add pertaining to the unseen patterns, or should I say the subconscious or
Uh-huh.
unconscious design of boomers.
Uh-huh.
And I've got just a few points to mention because the thing is that what I'm about to say basically describes how boomers navigate the world, you know.
Mhm.
And the first unseen pattern or subconscious or unconscious design of boomers is that stability is being viewed as virtue because
Yeah.
boomers basically grew up in a fairly linear environment. Just make sure that you commit to like a few decades of employment.
Mm-hmm.
You will receive a pension upon
Yeah.
retirement. And stability was expected, not
Yeah.
simply encouraged. So they therefore perceive instability rather than adaptability
Mm-hmm.
when they observe younger generations changing careers or evolving,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like the subsequent generations we're going to talk about. Because for them, it's a map from the past that has been updated. But now we live in different environments, but they
Yeah.
haven't really moved on
Yeah,
with that.
because it's fixed signs.
Yes, fixed signs, Pluto in
Characters.
a
Yeah.
fixed sign in Leo.
They
And the
cannot change.
second unseen pattern or subconscious or unconscious uh, design
Mm-hmm.
of them is that they usually confuse endurance with strength.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe many baby boomers were taught to endure everything in silence.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of things like dysfunction at work, at home, pain, and stress, they just kind of suck it up and move on with it.
Yeah.
So the gold standard was actually endurance for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, well-being and endurance are not the same thing. I mean, now we are aware of it, but you know, to that generation, it's not understood.
They cannot
I
help
mean,
that.
for sure, endurance basically strengthened their resilience as a generation, as boomers,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it also turned their emotional needs into liabilities as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I think about the third unseen patterns within boomers, is that meritocracy is being seen as natural law.
Mm-hmm.
What do I mean by that? Because in their time, you can or you could typically climb if you put in a lot of effort. Wages were commensurated with
Mm-hmm.
living expenses, and housing was readily available.
Mm-hmm.
There were institutions that were dependable at that time. Therefore, success continues to seem like a personal formula for boomers.
Mm-hmm.
And younger generations are living in a very different economic environment than boomers. The world, pardon me for saying this, but is broken by
Mm-hmm.
the equation.
Yeah.
And the boomer programming, in this case, did not adapt to a changing world, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do see with the fourth unseen pattern within the boomer generation is that authority equals order.
Yeah, definitely.
And they were raised in a society where it was common to have faith in institutions. This can be them being as employers. This can be institutions like within banks, physicians, and the government. There's this kind of faith in those places in which I just mentioned. And these pillars were actually sturdy when they were like in their prime years. Younger people are now questioning everything now that these systems are actually collapsing or inconsistent. And boomers frequently mistake that for revolt, when in reality it's actually adaptation, adjustment to what's being presented in front of us. Avoiding confrontation to maintain connection, I would say, is the last unseen or invisible or unconscious or subconscious design of boomers. Maintaining harmony became, for boomer as a generation, as a relational concern, because they were raised in homes where emotions were not freely expressed. Unspoken conflict, however, does not go away. It just festers. It becomes calcified, or it become like even passed down to subsequent generations even. Put it that way. And many of the issues raised by younger generations now have lingering effects of decades of silence. This is where I find the true fiction starts. And these patterns don't feel like patterns when they remain unconscious. They have the feel of reality as time goes by. Boomers basically grew up in a society that valued reliability, stability, and staying true to one's beliefs. It was not encouraged for the boomer generation to be flexible. Actually, Pluto in a fixed sign. And many of them, therefore, I find they are unable to adapt to the evolved world that we are living in. It's not because they are stubborn or obstinate. Rather, it's because their whole system was based on deficient, fixed structures. Many of the issues raised by the younger generations are basically what's left unspoken that's being passed down. Because the younger generations, I find there's this increasing need to become authentic and voice up. This is in contrast to boomers, where they grew up in a climate or culture that somewhat emphasizes conformity, if you think about it. Well, and also there's like a bridging, I would say, generation between boomers and Gen X. I'm talking about the years 1955 to 1965. There's actually like a subcategory. They are basically called like Generation Jones. I think that's what that's called. Not quite boomer. They're the younger boomer generation because they are still within that 40s, mid-40s to mid-60s, that few decades range, but they are like 1955 to 1965 particularly. There's actually a few things that I want to say regarding that. Well, I guess I would call it like microgeneration, because it's only like valid for those like 10 years. And they have their own so-called characteristics as well. Because when I think about those born 1955 to 1965, they are called Generation Jones. Growing up, that generation, they were surrounded by Gen X realities and boomer optimism. So that you can see there's this kind of transition.
Yes.
They were too old for the internet revolution, but they're too young for Woodstock. At the same time. So they were essentially given a society that continuously shifted the finish line while assuring them that they would be the next. put it
Mhm.
that way. And the reason they are being known by this term called Generation Jones is that they were constantly following the footsteps of the Jonases
Mhm.
after this kind of like, well, people call it American dream, but it's just like a collective dream that's back then.
Mhm.
Uh, that seemed to consistently vanish whenever they approach that milestone.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you have like this decade of people, this generation that's being brought up by continual nearness, delayed rewards, and a cultural script that never quite lived up to their expectations.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
with that, there's also like, I would say like I have written here like I would say like four main blind spots or unconscious or subconscious designs for
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
Um, I would say the first invisible pattern or blind spot here
Mhm.
is that they received the baby boomer notion that the system will take care of you if you worked hard and behave. A large number of them are still waiting for their reward for that.
Mhm.
And somehow, like, there's this kind of disappointment uh, within them that's being disguised as stoicism. You gotta be stoic. This can lead to some kind of spiritual fatigue, I find.
Mhm.
And when I think about the second blind spot or the second unconscious or subconscious design for the Generation Jones, because vulnerability wasn't modeled out for them, they were taught to repress their emotional demands. And
Mhm.
they may therefore find it difficult to genuinely express their desires without feeling somewhat guilty of it because
Mhm.
they frequently mistake self sacrifice for strength.
Mhm.
It's also present for them. And blind spot number three is that they are not inherently um, inflexible, but rather they have a tendency to over identify with the notion of stability.
Mhm.
And so therefore they may cling to what's familiar, even though the exact same thing is causing them pain because volatility was their constant backdrop or
Mhm.
background energies.
Mhm.
And so for the last blind spot that I have written for Generation Jones, born between 1955 to 1965, is that instead of searching within, they were trained to look up to authority
Mhm.
for acceptance. And
Mhm.
so for many of them, genuine self-confidence and trust, it's a lifelong growing process for them.
Mhm.
And real self-trust, it's a lifetime thing for them to develop.
Mhm.
And I will go on and say that the collective field of deferred embodiment of what I just mentioned is
Mhm.
being carried forward by Generation Jones, born between 1955 to 1965.
Yeah.
They do have a lot of potential, I must mention, that, but they need to do a few things in order to grow that real self trust or that
Mhm.
genuine self confidence.
Mhm.
They need to give up waiting for approval from the external environment
Mhm.
and acknowledge that the lessons that they have learned in their lifetime, it's about claiming reality rather than waiting for it. Do you have anything more to add, Dido?
Yep, yeah, I just want to look at that term, just a Pluto Virgo window. These years as humanity, we are once again beginning of an important cycle, 127 years Uranus Pluto conjunction, because it's really important period, long-term period behind the scenes. It was in Virgo. Now, we have Gemini and Virgo. These two signs have long-term cycles running at the background, and both of them are ruled by Mercury. Donny, it's kind of interesting, according to me again. Besides this conjunction, Uranus Saturn, Pluto Saturn oppositions occurred at the same time. That's why it's very important period, this 1965, because these combinations energy is a characteristic feature of the individuals born in that period. The Pluto-Uranus conjunction in Virgo offers a unique blend of revolutionary thinking with practical application. It promotes innovation, forward thinking, and departure from the status quo, all grounded in a pragmatic, structured, and detailed oriented approach. However, while offering great potential for change and growth, it also brings the challenge of balancing individuality with practicality and freedom, because of the hippie generations are belong to this, and I'm sure everyone knows what was going on Earth with these terms. Virgo generation grappled with work, systematicity, and healthy lifestyle. With Pluto in a sign ruled by Mercury, it's natural to learn more about research and information processing. This generation is more focused on efficiency and hard work. They are reliable, loyal, and empathetic. They are also focused on re-establishing system and using technology effectively. As we know, it's the Virgo symbolism. And this is a period of research and preparation. And it is also represent the Cold War era when patience and planning were essential to maintain peace. Both Uranus and Pluto in Virgo and Neptune in Scorpio, this generation focused on embodying wholeness and fulfillment, like Scorpio and Virgo combination, and focused on investing an independent project that changed the world for the better. Coupled with Neptune's placements in Scorpio, it's necessary to grapple with their own shadows, understanding that self perfection requires profound psychological and spiritual exploration. And spirituality combined with discipline, yoga, meditation, self improvement. This generation is considered the realistic generation because it's prioritize originality above all else, because Earth signs Virgo, as we know. And Virgo represent the ability to be whole and create independently without the influence of anyone else, because Virgo wants to do it by all themselves. They were breaking cultural taboos, hippie generation. We witnessed a creation outside of popular culture, hippies, MTV, backpack hip hop, and rise of magazines, independent bookstores, record labels, and a passion for grunge. LSD, maybe it's very important. Psychedelic culture became popular along with Neptune's arrival in Scorpio. This generation manifested itself in a life in harmony with nature, a vegetarian diet, and love of flowers, love of insects. I mean, the hippies era. It is a libertarian movement that imposes no boundaries, reject all existing authorities, and advocate communal level. Uranus in Libra, Neptune in Sagittarius. It was the way of thinking that freedom lies within the individuals, and this kind of thinking is transformed into a real life with Pluto in Uranus and Pluto and Uranus in Virgo. Drugs, music, and sexuality constituted a significant part of hippie culture. Gatherings and festivals were essential to their daily life. All of these occurred in this period, Pluto Virgo period. And that was Neptune Scorpio's passions, and Uranus Leo's creativity and express uniqueness. And at the same time, we also observe the shadows of Neptune in Scorpio. We witness deaths, massacres caused by subconscious which surfaced along with the drug abused, like Woodstock events and Manson case. In the end, their chase for hedonistic pleasures speed up and their downfall, speed up their downfall. It was Neptune in Sagittarius period. And Donny, there is a serial drama in Netflix named Aquarius, and this drama explains that term very well. If someone interested in watch this serial. Virgo is an earth sign, and so with Uranus moving into Virgo, the rise of mass agriculture and the excessive cultivation of land resulted from this period also. And this generation continues to shape culture today. They are almost 65 years old. In mundane level, this period colonialism collapsed. Many African countries declared their independence, civil rights movements, feminist movements, Vietnam War, the Computer Revolution, Berlin Wall, and shaping of Russia and Europe are examples of this period. Because this represented the post-war reconstruction period, each region in the world had to shape itself according to its own needs. In the following years, while nuclear and technological development continued, the space race intensified with Uranus transition to Libra. And Malcolm X, Martin Luther King are among the most important symbolic figures of that period. I Have a Dream speech paved the way for true freedom in the United States, 1963. Saturn in Aquarius, Jupiter in Aries. This speech is considered a turning point in the fight against racial discrimination in the United States. And after Vietnam War, civil rights movements began. Uranus conjunct Pluto. The Cold War intensified and the space race speed up. This is a Pluto Virgo term. Yeah. Continue, or do you want to add something in this context?
Not yet,
No, okay.
because Gen X also includes Pluto in Libra.
Yeah,
let's continue.
yeah, okay. Okay. Pluto, Libra rules by Venus, as we know. These generation are social and enjoy connecting with others. They're also compassionate and caring. This generation may have learned a great deal about tactics and diplomacy. Pluto here advocates for justice in society, more concerned with maintaining law and order, and they prefer to help those in need and bring justice to those who have been wronged. Uranus and Neptune are located in the sign of Sagittarius and Libra during this period, and this symbolizes the penetration of technology into the masses. Lifestyles and ideas are now spontaneously and instantly communicating to the people with no privacy left. This generation has no patience for waiting for information. Speed and variety are paramount. This period with Pluto and Uranus in Libra is a generation seeking freedom in relationship, and most importantly, women are more in the workforce, especially with Neptune in Sagittarius. It's a generation that idealizes freedom and experience and exalts beliefs. If we consider Libra's balance at all cost, this period coincides with the period when the government implemented tough on crime policies in the name of law and order. In this period, we witnessed intensified punishments, coups, and military administration, authoritarianism, global drug wars with the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, of course. Pluto wants to balance Libra's sense of harmony and justice. Therefore, it challenged Libra's values. The main effort was to restore moral values to a state of balance. Individuals born with Pluto in Libra carry a strong influence in these domains and tend to engage persistently in the pursuit of fairness and equality. This period coincided with the beginning of a digital age, 80s. The rise of modern technology, such as personal computers, computer games, global video recorders, Sagittarius, and optimism of governments promising, Sagittarius again. With the Saturn-Pluto closing square and then conjunction, we see the collapse of the global economy, the oil crisis, the Cold War and nuclear threat, the Middle East wars, the Iranian Revolution. Uranus in Sagittarius coincides with the dawn of the digital age, microprocessor era, Apple, genetic revolution, and the rise of China. And this is, for example, Elon Musk and founder of Uber, Google, YouTube, PayPal. This is the generation that made the technology revolution. Yes. Do you want to add
Yeah, I mean,
something?
when I think about Generation X, right,
Uh-huh.
as a whole, because this includes like both Pluto in both Virgo and
Yeah.
uh, Libra,
Mhm.
I do believe that Gen X is basically a generation that bridges between old and new consciousness.
Yeah, for sure.
And why do I say that? Because when I think about the sign of Virgo, where Pluto is when Gen X started,
Mhm.
Virgo to me as a sign is very much linked to Chiron,
Hmm.
which is bridge, a rainbow bridge of sorts. So that's why it's like a bridging generation
Mhm.
when this whole thing started. And I do see the generation born in this time frame is where the tipping moment where the new human template
Mhm.
began to emerge and the old one ceased to fit what's
Mhm.
coming up. And Gen X as well, I do find them being also raised similar to the silent and the boomer generation.
Mhm.
They are raised inside a single cohesive and cultural narrative. There's like some kind of clear social norms, traditional families, and predictable life
Mhm.
trajectories.
Mhm.
And there's also like a lack of emotional capacity.
Mhm.
If you express that, somehow you're being viewed as abnormal of sorts. But then when Generation X showed up,
Mhm.
this kind of broke the mold of that. And all of a sudden, the wiring looks a little different, I would say.
Mhm.
Things like sensitivity, pattern recognition, independence, emotional capacity, distrust of authority, and internal orientation all start to increase starting from Gen X.
Mhm.
And in all honesty, the first faint indications of what would eventually be pathologized, this comes in the form of neurodivergent characteristics.
Mhm.
Basically, I did some research, and children born within the Gen X generation, their neural system don't fit nearly or neatly into the old neurotypical mold.
Mhm.
And the entire cohort exhibits that with those Pluto in Virgo and Libra generation.
Mhm.
I think that's when the rigid ideal of what a typical person should be started to break down with the emergence of Generation X. And it was actually made much more intense via the cultural setting when they were growing up. And
Mhm.
I would say that Gen X is the first generation to grow up in unconventional family
Mhm.
structures.
Mhm.
Divorces increase
Yeah.
dramatically, particularly when we move into Pluto in Libra.
Yeah.
parts of it. And childhoods with latchkeys become more commonplace. Children were basically exposed into adult reality before they were prepared for. Being seen but not heard with the Gen X cohort may actually give way to, you will figure that out, within the sphere of like young parenting.
Yeah, freedom in
And
relationship.
Yes, and as a result, I find that Gen X, right, there can be this kind of emotional detachment, and they need to develop emotional self-sufficiency before they were even ready for it. And they are also a generation where they are acutely aware of the world in ways that they still can't put words to it. If I actually think about the subsequent generation in which we'll cover it in the next section, following Gen X, Millennials and Gen Z, I find they exhibit stronger increases in neurodivergent identification. But this actually started with the blueprint of Gen X, actually. However, long before anyone knew how to call it or name it, Gen X children already showed early signs of that change. And when you actually move from being silent to the boomer generation, then to the late boomers, and then all the way we suddenly hit Gen X. X basically stands for the unknown variable. The mutation, the transition, the thing that you're still unable to classify, or the stand-in for whatever comes next. So that's why I find that Gen X is the bridging generation between old and new consciousness.
You said mutant generation, huh? Pluto X.
Yeah. And Gen X is basically the first generation to grow up entirely digital.
Yeah.
And the final part of this Gen X cohort basically grown up with things that's entirely analog. Gen Xers, when they were very young, they did not have smartphones or computers growing up. They did not receive their education through the monitor or screens. Their world of quiet, boredom, seclusion, and physical community molded their nervous systems. However, when they actually gotten older, they had to learn how to use computers, the internet, email, smartphones, social media, and now AI, artificial intelligence. However, when they actually grew older, no, maybe let me take that back. So after, I think this part is even more important. After their identities are being established, they had to come to terms with a completely different reality because of the emergence of technology. They were therefore proficient in a skill that no other generation possesses. They were able to function in the digital age and recall life before it all started. The exact definition of a bridge is that of dual fluency, which is what Gen X possesses. Gen X also recognizes the importance of delay and its necessity. Of course, speed is essential. Privacy is crucial. But yet exposure is unavoidable. This can be talking about the local and the global, and the real and the virtual, like these two like very different worlds. The digital world is not completely understood by boomers. The analog world is not entirely understood by younger generations. Both languages, I would say, are still spoken by Gen Xers. Yet, it is very uniquely positioned, I find. I'm not talking about this whether Gen Xers are better or worse or superior.
Mhm.
It's just that they came in at a turning moment and in the evolution of humans. I guess that's the best way to put it. The old world consciousness and the new world consciousness are being connected via Gen Xers.
Yeah.
And if you know what you're looking for, you can find proof of that everywhere. Just like the very last Gen X slide that Diadem has, actually. Slide 24.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The bridging generation.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then,
Why not we go to Pluto and Scorpio? That's the
yeah,
millennials.
the millennials. Yeah, very powerful generation. It's in its own modern rulership. It means Pluto is very strong in this period. Yes, in general, Uranus and Neptune are in Sagittarius and Capricorn in this period. And these placements drive this generation to realize their ideals in the real world and disrupt the statu quo. Pluto in Scorpio became the generation that will push boundaries after the Libra generation that seek balance. This is the big difference between two generations. Pluto has taught them to be jack of all trades. This generation is also resourceful, creative, and curious. They understand the nature of constant transformation. They have developed resilience because they are strengthened by each transformation. They view sexuality differently. Pluto is ruled by Mars. We are talking about vibrant, strong, and ambitious characteristics here. By the way, they're in 30s now. It means they're in charge now and will be in charge for a long time to come. Pluto's transits in Scorpio, we witness the Gulf War, the end of Cold War, and the beginning of the World Wide Web. This is the shortest time Pluto has ever spent in a single time because of its ellipse orbit, as we know. Those with Pluto in Scorpio were thrust into a world of decay and corruption. Having Pluto in a sign ruled by Mars means knowing the power of true courage. For millions, this period triggered a cultural reckoning that brought widespread sexual abuse and assault to light. From the gymnastic abuse scandal in 19th to the Catholic Church scandal, they witnessed the power of confession. In other words, power of courage. This was the Scorpio generation. If there is a taboo, a cover-up, or scandal affecting the masses, Pluto in Scorpio has the power to dig into it or to change it. Jeffrey Epstein, for example, is one of the Leo generation, but the events surrounding this sexual scandal began in 1980s during the Pluto Scorpio era. And American rapper and record producer Diddy's parties also began during the Pluto Scorpio times. And Edward Snowden released all the information and escaped in that period too. This urge to share and illuminate deep emotions is reflected in this generation's popular culture because this period began with Uranus in Sagittarius. Social networks like MySpace, Facebook, Tumblr were created to allow the Pluto generation to publicize their inner worlds. The Uranus-Neptune Sagittarius period, which coincides with Atari and computer games, gave the way to Capricorn in 1984, and AIDS changed the perspective on sex. With Neptune in Capricorn and Uranus in Sagittarius, the global struggle for human rights is going momentum also. The Uranus-Neptune Capricorn period contributing to the somber mood or dark mood of the period because employment began to fall as a result of budget cuts. It was very dark term, or it's related somehow with sexual scandals, something like that. Neptune, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto in Capricorn in 1988. Neptune's dreams and ideals merge with Uranus's need to change the status quo, embodying in Saturn's own sign, Capricorn. This combination marked the end of communism in Europe, the fall of Berlin Wall, Tiananmen Square massacre, and dissolution of Soviet Union, and the end of the Cold War. Saturn-Uranus conjunction again. Yes. Do you want to add something at this point before we
I mean,
continue?
the thing is that I've got quite a number of things written for millennials, but even before I dip into the millennials generation, which I would say they've gotten a whole bunch of criticism and flack from those before them. I just want to mention here that even before we actually fully dip into the millennials generation, there's actually this micro generation that's called Zenials. That means it's a bridge between Gen X and millennials. But it's a very, very micro generation that I'm actually part of because it's a micro generation that's born between 1977 and 1983. They are a very small batch of people. And they basically exist in two very different kinds of reality. They're almost like caught in this kind of like transitional period because they are born between 1977 to 1983, right in between those Gen X and millennials bridging part. And as a Xennial, like myself, I often feel alienated because of this. Gen X find people born in my micro generation too sincere. But millennials find us too direct. And Gen Zs find us just old. So I find that like in this micro Xennial generation of mine, we serve as the permanent intermediary to mediate between what's before and what's after us. And now we should move on to the actual millennial generation, which I feel that starts from 1983 onwards. I do see the millennial generation as the acceleration generation. I know that for millennials, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have received more criticisms than other generations. I find that unjustified. It's not because they're flawless, let me put it that way, but because the majority of people are basically unaware of the role that millennials were born into. The issue is not about millennials themselves. The accelerated generation is what they are. And additionally, acceleration always or somewhat appears chaotic from the outside. The unresolved patterns of previous generations, as we mentioned even before, they are passed down to subsequent generation. The model of emotional repression and compliance was established by the silent generation. It was solidified by the steadiness, tenacity, and institutional trust of the boomers. And Gen X started to crack the shell, but they didn't break it. They act as the conduit or the bridging generation. They could see the walls encroaching, but they lack the resources and cultural influence to demolish anything. Millennials are the first generation that had to build both the that had to both build the new structure and live outside the old ones that uh, as they collapsed, basically. So the assignment is practically unachievable. They were brought up to abide the laws of a dying world, to be honest. Attend college, put forth a lot of effort, purchase a home, and have faith in the system. All of these or those systems had failed them by the time they were adults. Literally, not figuratively. Millennials therefore discovered very early on that endurance would not save them. The maps that they were presented when they were growing up were inaccurate, and that the systems failed to live up to their expectations. And therefore, they need to constantly adapt. So therefore, this whole acceleration period when they grew up, it's not about them being like, just sitting back and just like whine and stuff like that, but because they're being thrusted into this changing world. One thing that I find with millennials, because they do have that actual millennials, that is, they have that Pluto in Scorpio. And Pluto in Scorpio, I find that they are a generation of grievers. They are grieving a lot. A lot of huge, silent, unsaid sorrows basically follow them. That's what I've found. And the sorrow of a future that was promised to them but never came to materialize or pass. The anguish of doing everything correctly, yet they're still being overlooked. The anguish of being held accountable for structural flaws that they did not cause. The sorrow of taking over institutions that were already in disarray or in chaos. Being the first generation to acknowledge that stability was a myth caused a lot of anguish that was actually buried within them. Mm-hmm. The grief of having to emotionally reparent themselves because no one taught them to navigate this unstable world that they grew up in. Mm-hmm. And they are not on the other side of that grief. They are in the thick of it right now. If I were to think about the millennials as growing up, or should I say like in countries such as China right now, they are going through the most. The whole country is just like collapsing on its own, like, housing market collapse. Like, it's just like the tip of the iceberg. And then you've got all this responsibilities that they have to, like, how many mouths to feed at home. Mm-hmm. It is very crushing. Mm-hmm. And millennials are around the 29 to 44 age range right now, I think. Yeah. This stage of life should be stable if you think about it. The building, the stability, the payout years, it occurs around like your late 20s to your mid 40s. But whatever that they witness, millennials in this age range, is nothing as planned. They're being thrust into a world with entirely different rules after being given the old script in 1 year, and they're being told to, or being instructed to obey it. Millennials are basically metabolizing more structural change. Like what you mentioned, Diadem, with that Saturn-Uranus conjunction in Sag. It's very indicative of that. And within the millennial generation, they're still processing that kind of world structural collapse. And many of them are also starting or raising families without a true cultural blueprint for parenting through all this instability. And yet they are taking in most of the criticism. Is it really fair? Mm. I just want to be fair to millennials. And But despite all these things that's happening around them, millennials basically built things. They built entire industries. They made emotional literacy and therapy more commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
They challenged detrimental traditions.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding mental health, trauma, identity, workplace culture, and systemic corruption, they also are a generation that I find they broke generational taboo as well.
Mm-hmm.
They compelled institutions to confront their own failures. Nothing was broken by millennials, to be honest. They were simply the first generation whose awareness outpaces the systems that they inherited. And they were penalized for it because of this. The generation that is initially affected by instability is being seen as the issue here, when in reality, millennials serve as the early warning system. So if you actually see it that way, they are the ones also that provides the forward momentum as well. I call them the forward momentum agents. That's what the millennials are.
Good phrase.
Yeah, because globalization was part of millennials' upbringing, to be honest. The constant news cycles, concerns following 9/11, economic downturns, growing educational expenses, dwindling job security, housing disparity, and the need to always be flexible, it has always been on their cards. So turbulence was always their baseline, to be honest. And this environment basically put them in a state to be focused a lot on self-awareness, mental wellness, authenticity, and exposing all the systemic problems as a result. And if I were to be honest, they are also the ones who are built to see the future as well. Why do I say that? Because millennials feel comfortable, or should I say accountable, is a much better word, for fixing issues that they did not cause because they anticipated them all along. And there's actually a part of them that thinks that they should correct it if they see the issue. Millennials also, there's this one thing that I want to mention as well. Millennials usually confuse emotional responsibility with emotional insight, because they have to learn that they don't have to handle someone's reaction just because they can predict it. And also millennials, I find that they are very strong, intuitive and instincts wise. They are very strong in that. It's almost like their psychic perception or their intuitive and instinctual perception is always on, and they're always scanning the environment. They're always predicting what will happen next. And that's why their nervous system never quite get a break from it. And they are also never taught that boundaries are necessary for perception.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody taught them that seeing the pattern doesn't mean holding that pattern as well. And they were never taught that fate is not foresight as well. It's data, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to be blunt, they do have a few like, what do you call that? Unconscious or subconscious patterning or design. I find that millennials often confuse stability with survival mode. That's what they're used to, right?
Yeah.
And then they were also trained to mistake empowerment with fatigue. They always have to hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And they mistake that for empowerment when they are like burnt out. Also, they might think as a generation that being independent entails working alone.
Hmm.
They may also believe that they belong to the neutral generation. And last but not least, millennials have a lot of unacknowledged sadness and grievances.
Mm-hmm.
I think I should end it here. It's a lot for millennials. Because I remember myself when millennials came into the workforce, how I treated them. So when I think about all the astrological like stuff that they have to juggle,
Mm-hmm.
it is a lot.
Yeah, they will glad to hear all about that. Yes. Do we ready to continue with Sagittarius, Tony?
The Gen Zs finally.
Generation, yeah, Sagittarius. Pluto in Sagittarius. Let me change the slide. Yes. Pluto in Sagittarius is a generation connected to adventurers. Yeah, many in Z generation share the courage of Sagittarius. We see how information, of course, combined with modern technology, has carried us into the 2000s. There is a touch of rebellion in this generation, influenced by Uranus in Aquarius. They don't hold back and they speak their minds. Sagittarians paved the way for everyone because of their strong beliefs and fearlessness, coupled with their fairy nature. Sagittarians love connecting and socializing with people from other nations, and the internet is a tool that allows us to stay connected in that manner. This generation has the ability to travel the globe to explore and fight for shifts in power in the world. They want to liberate themselves and society from restrictive traditions. They are known by many names, Generation Z, the TikTok generation, and the snobs. They're called like that because they have been driven by their swift and unbridled rejection of tradition. They are very good at improvised irony and or satire. They are very good at to mock stale concepts and unquestioned traditions, and they transform them into viral reels. Those with Pluto and Sagittarius are the first real people in the digital world because they're born in it, which gives them an instinct to expose nonsense on social platforms when and where it's needed. In recent years, we witnessed the rise of cancel culture. Your love is canceled, something like that. It represents a modern form of exclusion in which an individual is pushed beyond the boundaries of the social field. But the danger of this power is a repeat and uncontrolled mob mentality. Its shadow is a lack of patience. What fuels the Pluto in Sagittarius generation is to spread the message as far and wide as possible. It's hard to say that they have given much thought to the consequences. This generation easily inflamed by anger or by just a cause. The danger with this generation is that many will easily become radicalized. Like Pluto in Leo generation, they tend to take themselves too seriously. This period began with Saturn in Pisces. Of course, the shadows of this symbolism were intensely observed at first. We see that this generation is experiencing drug addiction or social media addiction, all kind of addiction, I mean. These people neither works nor studies. They live solely online, Neptune, Uranus in Aquarius. They're trying to build their identities in virtual environments. Some of them are being dragged along by following the wrong role models. Uranus Neptune mutual reception in this period, by the way, it's very important signification of astrological symbolism. Saturn's transition to Cancer had led us to describe this generation as need, not an education, employment, or training. Some of them emotionally well-being is weak and just live in their rooms. The effort to form an emotional bond often goes unanswered. Neptune and Uranus are in Aquarius, meaning they experience individualized TV, music, and the internet. They are disconnected from society through personalized advertising and content, and they have easy access to the world. Today, the gang known as Dalton, for example, this gang has members from all over the world, and this gang recruits their members online. Very dangerous thing nowadays. The average age is between 15 and 20. Juvenile or child gangs take their names from famous cartoons to gain sympathy, like the Caspers, the Daltons, the Smurfs. The number of child gang is increasing very rapidly nowadays. It seems that these kind of juvenile gangs members are Pluto, Sagittarius, and Capricorn, I'm afraid. Every coin has two sides, right? Let's see the advantage of this generation in positive perspective. This generation is naturally tend to global thinking, embracing new ideas and adapting new ideas or the new world. This will offer significant advantages as multicultural business, digital nomadism, and cross-border ventures will become more prevalent in the future. Not losing their motivations also can be an advantage. Therefore, this generation possesses a character that is both system destroying, Pluto in Sagittarius, Uranus in Aquarius, or system building, Neptune in Capricorn, and digitally idealistic, Neptune in Aquarius, Uranus in Pisces. They are successful in the field of digital illustration, NFTs, digital arts, artificial intelligence, supported softwares, and gaming. The fundamental success of Pluto's Sagittarius generations can be explained as knowledge, freedom, globalization, search for meaning. This generation doesn't blindly believe to a single truth. They search for them. Yes, both side of the coins. What do you think?
Yes, well said. Because when I think about the generations leading up to Gen Z, right?
Uh-huh.
Gen X is like the bridging generation, the hinge. And then it's followed by the millennials, which is the acceleration king with the millennials.
Mhm.
Gen Z is actually the first disruptive generation, to be honest.
Mhm.
And they only know of this digital age or world that we live in. There's no recollection of the previous one, to be honest.
Mhm.
And so as a result, I find that they perceive society's structure for what it truly is, rather than what previous generations were indoctrinated to believe it to be.
Mhm.
So growing up, they witnessed every institution's failure in real time.
Mhm.
Political structures, healthcare, education, religion, media, finance, jobs, and
Mhm.
the environment. In front of them, everything just broke.
Mhm.
And so before the myth can have a chance to gain traction, they ceased or stopped believing in it.
Mhm.
In the first place, they most likely never believed in it altogether.
Mhm.
So Gen Z is not, I would say, disobedient. Simply said, they are just being truthful. Pluto in Sag, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
And they are not indifferent, disrespectful, or allergic to hypocrisy. Simply put, they're just being worn out by ineffective systems. They also generate disruptions because they the only sensible reaction to the world, held together by duct tape and dentine, is disturbance.
Mhm.
Simply put, this is what distinguishes them. And
Mhm.
instead of fixing malfunctioning system, Gen Z circumvents them. They produce new political language, economic models, gender classifications, careers, relationships,
Mhm.
communication styles, community organization strategy, and transparency standards. They simply construct around the old world rather than updating it. I guess that's the main thing that I want to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
As compared to Gen Z, millennials made an effort to fix the system. Gen Z questions the purpose of the system instead.
Yeah, yeah.
Additionally, the structure of their neurological systems differ for Gen Z as a generation. Faster BS or bullshit detection, reduced tolerance for incoherence,
Mm-hmm.
increased sensitivity, and improved pattern recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And this a predisposition for decentralization as well.
Mm-hmm.
And older generations before Gen Z may misinterpret them because of this. The rise of the true world and the fall of the performing one, which is right now,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that they are being symbolized by Gen Z. They are opposed to hierarchy, Gen Zers. Networks are what they desire, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
They have no desire for power. They desire openness. Tradition is not what they want. They seek the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The road is not what they want. They are looking for alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, they will destroy any building that requires them to betray themselves in order to be a part or be associated to it. The planet, I would say, is not maintained by Gen Z. But Gen Z entered the picture to interrupt and stop it. They are not flawed by disruption. It's their task, Gen Zers. It's a gift from them, Gen Zers. And that's because Gen Z refused to pretend the old world makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And this sets the stage for whatever Gen Alpha builds in the future to be feasible, but we will get to that later.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to touch a little bit more about Gen Z. Some call it blind spot, some call it unconscious or subconscious
Mm-hmm.
patterning or design.
Mm-hmm.
I do find that Gen Z, right, they can be scattering their energy and mistaking motion for progress.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z have naturally an extremely high threshold for chaos and a low threshold for boredom.
Mm-hmm.
I think you would agree with this.
Yes,
And additionally,
definitely.
Gen Zers have a threshold for Gen Z hardly have a threshold for systematic patience. So therefore, even if something is still going in the proper direction, Gen Zers will assume that it's incorrect the moment it stops being stimulating. Sometimes it's dedication rather than clarity that presents a barrier for Gen Zers. And another blind spot I do find with Gen Zers is that there tends to be identity fluidity without an interior anchor. Gen Zers are pretty good at investigating identities, but formation is different from exploration.
Of course, for sure.
A steady inner self must eventually take the lead, to be honest. And another blind spot or unconscious or subconscious design of Gen Z that I find is that personal truth, they have a personal truth without shared truth. They have every freedom and right to reject
Of course. Yeah.
antique systems or systems that don't work anymore, but shared baselines are still necessary for society to function. Building collective structures is simply insufficient in many situations in this case, despite they value their personal truths more. And another thing is that They are a generation that look for instant access and shallow discernment. I think Gen Z is the generation that can really almost instantaneously locate information. The blind spot here is that everything on the internet seems equally genuine and important. The internet doesn't slow down, which is necessary for discernment.
Mhm.
So there can be this blindness to take something and just pass it off as, oh, okay, just because it came up in the first Google search, therefore I find that it's true.
Yeah.
And Gen Z is also a generation of advocacy.
Mhm.
They do reflect, but without staying power. I mean, I know that it's crucial that they need to speak up as soon as they witness injustice. But however, identifying a problem is not the same as finding a solution.
Of course, yes.
And the pace of structural change is slower than your attention. Your attention means Gen Z's attention.
Mhm.
And it is what your attention span desires, which is just like kind of,
Yeah.
everything's very quick. It's just like scrolling TikTok, right?
Mhm.
The last one, which I find that's important to mention here, is digital intimacy.
Mm.
I'm talking about online relationships because they do feel genuine, more genuine than other generations pertaining to Gen Z.
Mhm.
But there's no like, how do I put this? Corporeal intimacy. So this comes as a blind area for them. Relationships do require presence, patience, and healing. But however, a digital life do not develop these muscles.
Yes, unfortunately.
And therefore, this can be a blind spot for Gen Zers to develop as they grow older. Some may not get there, some will eventually.
Yeah, of course, some of them can do that.
So let's move on to yes, the Gen Alphas.
Yeah, generation. Pluto Capricorn. Pluto Capricorn generation. Let's change the slide, yes. Grew up during the Great Recession, birth of social media, wars, and COVID pandemic. Consequently, this is a time when government plays major role in everyone's life. Because Saturn seeks structure and order, and Pluto in Capricorn era is represented by rules and regulations. That's why this generation will be interested in making social change that conform to Saturn's rules. During period reign in Capricorn, there were political and institutional transformations, especially throughout the 2020s. We know that this period has led to the collapse of long expired institutions and outdated power structures. For example, in education system, curriculums have been updated and adapted to the new developments such as AI technologies and something like that. Those born under these transits will be hardworking, unafraid of challenges, and tenacious. Pluto's placements here makes them meticulous, productive, and determined to achieve victory. The power of Pluto in Capricorn is the ability to observe the lessons of the past and transform them into workable structure for future generations. That was good thing. If we consider the shadow side of Capricorn symbolism, the ambition brought on by goal-oriented behavior also symbolizes a ruthless and cruel generation. When Pluto in Capricorn and Neptune in Aquarius, there is no room for emotion in their life, unfortunately. They don't form deep, meaningful relationship. They align themselves with certain groups based on their own interest. With the combination of Pluto Capricorn and Uranus in Aries, we have entered a period in which violence is even more prevalent. When we add Neptune and Aquarius to this equation, we observe a generation unable to integrate, socially distant, rebellious, and angry, and obsessed with a cause or idea. These are the statistics from different countries, Donny. The common point is the increase of juvenile crime and drug use. This starts with Pluto Scorpio and continues, unfortunately. Like we said before, every coin has two sides. It reflects of only one of them, these graphs. When we turn to the other side, the advantage of the coin, we see a highly resilient generation, actually. We can say that this generation quite realistic and they have seen the consequences of a life lived entirely online. They are teenagers now, and let's not forget that the success will be seen in later years because Saturn rules the Capricorn. This generation will see the results of hard work in their mature years. Both Capricorn and Taurus are earth signs. Productivity is important, goal is important. With Neptune Pisces, they will have ideals or goals for the future, and they will have enough energy and perseverance for reaching their goals because we are talking about Capricorn, right? Saturn and Capricorn. Yes, what do you think about this generation, Donny?
I mean, Gen Z is the first one that has not had any memory of an analog or analogous childhood. They don't have any memory of that. They are purely thrust into this period of like knowing that without AI, streaming, instantaneous responses, global communities, and decentralized information, the world would not exist at all. And they understand that as Gen Alpha. So this generation is the first to grow up totally inside the demise of previous systems and the emergence of entirely new ones. Whatever that's disrupted by the Gen Zers, this will pass on the reins for Gen Alpha to build new systems or structures altogether in this new world. Everything that everything that Gen Alpha experience will not be similar to Gen Zers. Because Gen Z is the one that disturbed the magic and broke the magic set prior. And so, if I were to think about Gen Alpha, they won't be attached to organizations that previous generations worked for decades to protect them and to reform them. Instead of arguing, I find that Gen Alpha, the Gen Alpha group, they will point out the inefficiencies and ask, okay, so why are we doing it that way?
Yeah, typically.
And they will also be the first generation to treat AI as a typical companion who poses no threat to them. They won't be adoring it or be afraid of it at the same time. They will utilize it in the same manner as Google is used by millennials. Also, Gen Alpha's emotional language is part of their upbringing. I find that Gen Alpha will be a generation that have far stronger emotional literacy. And they won't tolerate emotionally immature grown-ups at all. That Capricorn and Saturn energy. They will be the generation that will ask, it's not my responsibility that you can't control your nervous system. They'll be the ones who actually bring up that point, really, to the generations prior. And because they are being formed in a world where identities, categories, and structures are malleable, they will be very flexible thinkers as well. If I think about Gen Z as the disruptor generation, Gen Alpha will have the duty of rebuilding. That's in short what I think. Um, Gen Alphas will be the system architects and prototypers. They'll be the ones who actually say, let's build something that actually works because we never had a template that worked in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
If I think about Gen Alphas and their shadow side, I would think that they will be a generation that's overstimulated. There will always be this desire for novelty,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be a limited tolerance for slow operations. Everything has to be quick.
Yeah.
But however, there's always two sides of it, right?
Yeah.
They do have their strengths.
Yeah.
Their strengths will be they're always ready to embrace a fresh start.
Mm-hmm.
They're also very flexible, and they naturally will have clarity about things much faster than prior generations.
Yeah.
I think this is what I have for Gen Alpha. Very, very encouraging
Yeah.
to see what they can bring to the table.
Let's see. Wait and see. Wait and see.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, finally. Pluto in Aquarius. Yes, this generation will carry the values of the past into the new age with Pluto's transformative energy. They develop a strong sense of authority and lead movements that form the basis for government accountability and institutional change. This generation will rebuild civilization and change the established order and rules of the world. Today, governments around the world are trending toward corruption, favoring their own supporters, oligarchies, and authoritarianism. Consequently, unequal income distribution is expected to generate deep collective disruptions. Also, it may cause structural transformations in housing, security, economy, land, food, and belongings. An online identity will stand out more. Early maturation, search for security, climate, environment, and social equality, technology-centered identity, search for meaning may occupy our agenda in the next days. Anytime online, anytime accessible generation, this generation. Neptune Taurus means dissolution and new consciousness in money, food, and nature. We know that it's represent with Taurus. The duo of Pluto Aquarius and Neptune Taurus means popular revolutions or uprisings and the distractions of a safe order concept. Major themes include the great disintegration of monetary system, the collapse of some currencies, food and agricultural crisis, the artificial food revolution, global crisis stemming from water and soil, the changing concept of land and property. For example, electrical vehicles. Sales of electric vehicles are steadily increasing compared to gasoline-powered cars. In some European cities, low emissions or low zero emission zone have already been introduced where access is restricted to ICE vehicles. Electrical cars receive software updates remotely, much like smartphones. This means that certain functions, including access, performance limits, or even immobilization, can technologically be controlled at a distance. In this sense, vehicle usage is no longer based solely on ownership, but increasingly on digital permission and system authorization. I mean, we seem already okay with it. I myself personally use electric cars. It's good, but it's kind of dangerous for the future. That's what I mean, the changing concept of property. It will be the same for smart houses very soon. It's not our property. Actually, it's already controlled by the technology companies. This means the relationship between people and property will most likely shift from ownership to right of access. I think we'll see more frequent economic uncertainty during this shift in consciousness.
So everything will be subscription based. There's no
That
such thing as ownership
I
moving
think
forward.
so. I think so. I think so. It's also possible that there will be a spiritual transformation and a realization that material security is an illusion, Neptune in Taurus. Minimalism, simple living, and movements in harmony with nature are among the key themes. Waves of migration and displacement, massive internal and external migration due to climate, wars, or economic reasons, whatever, radical transformation in family structure, dissolution of the classical family model like this. New generations are moving away from the old large family or nuclear family models. Digital, multi-centered, collective lifestyle will be much more common in the future. World fertility rates already have been declining over the years. Also, the rupture of the concept of homeland, strong popular uprisings in some countries, the meaningless of borders in some places are possible scenarios during the Pluto Aquarius period. I think Chinese humanoid army is very example over the next years. According the news, this army is beginning its mission. It will be unarmed for now, but can be armed. Armed operations are also possible in the future. One of the model of this army can operate continuously 24 hours a day thanks to its battery replacements feature. Can you imagine that? The news said the Vietnam border is just a pilot area. We will see the same robots in Taiwan Straits or islands in 2026. Yeah, Pluto Aquarius generation system changing power generations. And two,
Even Singapore, we are getting a whole bunch of
yeah, I've read it,
advanced AI
unfortunately.
chips from Nvidia. So yeah,
Unfortunately.
yeah.
Yeah, two things get my attention, Donny, when I worked on this presentation. First, I want to begin with Leo Aquarius signs. The complementary axis, opposite signs of Leo and Aquarius should take our attention first. We can also think of this as a full moon phase. As we know, the opposition describes the mature and visible period of the seeding, as we know. The rebellious spirit of Pluto-Leo period, which emphasizes creativity and individual freedom, is trying to evolve towards the social benefit, Aquarius, social benefit and individual equality in Pluto Aquarius period. Secondly, the same zodiac transits of Uranus. This led me to the similarities and possibilities differences between these two periods. Yeah, here. I before I'm moving on there, I would like to open a short parenthesis of the year 2026. The year 2026 will be the year when the slow-moving planets make 9 aspects simultaneously. We already discussed in previous recording with you, Donny. Across historical timeline, heightened synchronicity has frequently corresponded with significant turning point in the world event, and 2020 is one of them. The Jupiter-Pluto opposition will inject an energy into the atmosphere that will trigger this effect. Unfortunately, now we hear leaders threatening war more often than in the past. Let's hope the
And
world
also
doesn't sink.
military conscription.
Unfortunately, let's hope the world doesn't sink deeper by adding new wars to the ongoing ones. Yes, what is the difference and similarities before this opposition, Aquarius Leo opposition? It's similar. Yes, both are system changing. power generations. Pluto in Leo, rebuild the world after war. Pluto Aquarius are rebuilding institutions through digital system and technology. Both generation emerged after chaos or war. Pluto in Leo, extreme individualism. Pluto Aquarius, technocratic control. In both, Pluto overpowers the collective. Pluto Leo overpowers the collective through leaders. Pluto Aquarius overpowers the collective through systems. Both are products of technological leaps. Pluto in the automobile, nuclear energy, mechanization of home life. Pluto Aquarius, IA, robots, digital identity. Both are revolutionary youth generation. Pluto in Neo, beat or hippie movements. Pluto Aquarius, online mobilization, digital activism. Both generation express rebellion. Pluto in Leo rebels through culture and bodies, hippies. Pluto Aquarius rebels through networks and codes. All can I can say about the generations, I think. This is my
Well,
thoughts on the subject.
because the thing is that for the next 9 years, starting in 2025
Mhm.
into 2035, that is, this is the first year that Pluto has gone out of bound to the southern declination instead of the northern. And I've read certain things written by, well, an article written by an astrologer who's done a lot of like heavy studies on when Pluto goes out of bound to the northern declination versus the southern declination. And for the next 10 years, that means until Pluto transits halfway through Aquarius, we're going to see a lot of themes of power to the people. Because when I think about Pluto in Leo, it's very top down. But Pluto in Aquarius is bottom up. So systems may be in place to control, the masses, stuff like that. But the next 9 years till 2035 is going to be interesting to see how much people are just, it could be blatantly like just refusing all those like systems that's going to be implemented. So it's going to still be like in a flux of sorts. Not to forget that the ruler of transit Pluto, which is that transit Uranus, will be going out of bound from 2030 to 2035.
Yes.
So this is going to be even more extreme as we approach end of this decade, when even Uranus together with Pluto both go out of bound at the same time. I think there's some overlap. They do overlap for quite good chunk of time, so it's going to be even more interesting. And we won't be able to identify the new world in the 2030s like we would right now, to be honest. But I do want to add that Pluto in Aquarius generation, they're still very young.
Yeah, very.
And they may next time be used to 15-minute cities, digital IDs, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies that expires over time, so your money is not even yours.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's this whole thing regarding UBIs or universal basic income. But this is what we project how the future will look like for them. But it's for them to experience and build, particularly coming from the recent Gen Alphas. After the disruption generation, which is Gen Z. Yeah.
Let's hope the good things, Donny. Let's hope the good things.
I mean,
but
astrology.
Yeah, go on.
Astrology, there's no bad or good, but it's just kind of described like a trend.
Yeah.
So if we actually put like moral goodness or distinguish good and bad, then we won't be able to kind of see the symbols or the archetypal energies of the planets coming through. So
at the first, we observed the shadow sides of the symbolism at the beginning. Then we evolved the positive sides. So we have to accept, and we have to be volunteer to face the truth, what is happening right now, or what will
I think the
happen?
best thing, I know it's very hard for people to do this, but is to remain neutral, see both sides of the coin, the
Yeah,
good, the bad, and the ugly,
yeah,
and put all facets of it out because planets just won't, planetary energies just won't manifest in just one singular channel or
yeah.
way or manner. It
Mhm.
just is multifaceted in its manifestation. So,
Definitely, for sure.
yeah. So, do you have any ending notes for us, Didem?
I think that's all I can say about this subject. And Donny, I want to thank you for having me your channel again.
Well, I'm glad that you're presenting this because I find that there's so much intergenerational understanding all the way dating back to the silent generation that we need to see what traumas are being passed down.
Yeah. Mhm.
So we tie in that generational trauma with the world that we are living in. We can see where we are heading. And that is so important at this point in time in human history. So till next time then, shall we?
Next time. Okay, Donny, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.